Thank you so much. Thank you for your welcome. It's a privilege to be with you. I am being taken out of retirement, so I'm very ancient, so historic is probably the correct word. But let's pray. Father, I pray now for all the decisions and deliberations that will be made here today. We pray for these islands. And every member of this council has a concern for the well-being of the land and its people. We pray now that they will be helped in all they have to do what is right and what is for the best for all. I pray in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you all for attending this meeting. I'm sure lots of people thought it was at 9:30. I know it took me a long time to convince myself it wasn't. Agenda item 2, minutes of previous meetings. To confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the Council of the Isles of Scilly held on the 22nd of August, minutes number C3116 to C5016. Unless there's any objection, I'll take them both together. Councillor Mrs. Grotter.
I did have an amendment I'd like to make to the second set of
All right, well,
Chairman.
okay, in that case we'll take them separately. So, may I know your wishes?
I propose, Chairman.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show. To confirm as a record the minutes of the meeting of the Council of the Isles of Scilly held on the 27th of September 2016, minutes number C5116 to C6616. Councillor Mrs. Grotte.
Thank you, Chairman. If members could turn to page 6, I would like a little bit of 1, 2, 3, 4, fifth sentence down. I'm quoted as saying that I would prefer to withdraw my proposal. I withdrew my proposal when it became apparent there was not majority support for it around the chamber. I did not prefer to withdraw it. In fact, I was disappointed. So please could we actually remove prefer? I said I would withdraw it.
Fine, thank you. So we just delete prefer and to. Thank you very much. Are there any further? Councillor Mrs. Saville.
Chairman, I propose with that amendment as a correct record.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Mrs. Mumford. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any? No, none that I can see. Chairman's announcements. Towards the end of October, I attended meetings in London with our MP, also a meeting of the LGA. It has, to my chagrin, it has become apparent, not just to me, but to members of authorities throughout the country, that it is less easy to meet ministers than in the previous administration. I did at first worry that this might be due to the size of our authority, but when I've spoken to colleagues who represent huge authorities in the country and they're saying exactly the same thing, the idea seems to be that the present government is rather bothered with the business of Brexit rather than listening to elected members around the country, which I think is a great shame. On Armistice Day and again on Remembrance Sunday, I represented the authority at the services to commemorate the fallen of all wars. The ceremonies this year were held in the park at the Secondary War Memorial and were very well attended, I'm pleased to say. We've had public meetings on all the islands now. Latterly we've had Briar and Tresco, but I'm pleased to say that all meetings, certainly on the off islands, were extremely well attended, and at all meetings there was a very vigorous level of debate, which is good. That is all I have for the moment. Moving on to 5, to consider reports from committees. Children's Committee, Chairman, Councillor Mrs. Saville.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no reports under Part 1. Under Part 2, the Children's Committee submits the minutes as listed for the information of Council.
Thank you very much. Community Services, Chairman, Councillor Mrs Grotty.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. There are no reports in Part 1. I present the draft minutes of the 25th of October 2016 for the information of Council.
Thank you. Finance, Audit and Scrutiny, Councillor Simms.
No reports in Part 1 and as listed Part 2 from the 21st of July 2016.
Thank you. Health and Wellbeing Board, Councillor Mrs Saville.
We have not met, unfortunately.
Thank you. But I'm correct in thinking there is a date in the diary now for the next meeting.
There is a meeting scheduled for January the 19th.
Thank you. Health Overview and Scrutiny, Chairman Councillor Billsborough.
Chairman, I have checked the draft minutes of the meeting on the 24th of November this weekend, and there's not been time to publish and circulate them yet.
Thank you. Inshore Fisheries Conservation Authority, Chairman Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Chairman. There are no reports in Part 1. I'd like to present the minutes as stated in the agenda of the Inshore Fisheries Conservation Authority on the 20th of October.
Thank you. Licensing Committee, Chairman Councillor Mrs Peacock. Could you put the mic on?
Thank you. We have got an item in Part 1, and you will find it on page 67. It's a review of the sex establishment policy. We need to do this so that we are fully compliant with what the government need us to do, and it's all there in case anybody should want to do anything. And I submit the minutes of the Licensing Committee held on the 13th of October for your perusal.
Thank you.
Did anybody have any comments on the sex policy?
I think we need to officially adopt it, Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman. I have read the report and I propose to accept it. It's interesting to see it is longer than the finance report, but I'll make no comment.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Mumford.
Was that a proposal, Councillor
Yes.
Billsborough? I'll second that then.
Thank you. Those in favour, please show clearly. Thank you. Councillor Mrs Peacock, do you wish to come back again? Or?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you. Planning Committee, Chairman Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman. I appreciate having to follow that one. No reports under Part 1. I'll present the minutes as listed under Part 2 for information of Council.
Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, Chairman Councillor Mrs Saville.
Yes, Chairman. Sadly, this committee has not met either. We're trying, but we haven't got a date as yet.
The Transport, Economic Development and Infrastructure is going to be presented by the Vice Chairman, Councillor Dorian Smith.
Thank you, Chairman. No reports in Part 1. I'd like to submit Part 2, the minutes of the meeting on 18th October for approval.
Thank you very much. Councillor Billsborough, did you wish to come back in?
Sorry.
No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that. We know how to get silence in the room, which policies we bring to the table. It's good. Item 6, written questions to the Chairman of Committees not submitting reports. I'm not aware of any. No, thank you. Item 7, to consider motions in accordance with Standing Order 5. No. Urgent items.
No, I've had none.
No, none that have come in. Thank you very much. We move on to Part 1, reports requiring a decision. Unfortunately, given the weather this morning, we have got, you'll have noticed, neither the Section 15 officer, Mr Andy Brown, nor Geraldine Daly, the auditor, actually in the room, but we shall be dialing in, and although that's not nearly as good as having them in person, it should be possible to ask them questions. We will hope that the link works. Given that the statement of accounts is an update and that this is very much work in progress still, I would ask you to bear with the situation. It is imperative that these people shall be in the room on January the 26th when the statement of accounts will come to us in its final version. When the Chief Executive has just pointed out, when we have got the phone set up, then if everybody could switch off all their mics just in case when it's on, and that includes mine. It's already... Yeah, we're going to... Right, okay. Can you hear me on the other side of the water?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Are you both in the same room or are you on separate lines?
We're both in the same room.
All right, excellent, good. So if Andy, you and Geraldine would just like to reintroduce yourselves to members and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andy Brown. I'm the Service Director for Resources at Cornwall Council, but I'm, of course, since the 1st of October, the Section 151 Officer for the Council of the Isles of Scilly. Apologies, I couldn't be there in person today. Unfortunately, the flights didn't allow, and I very much wish to have been there in person to present the reports and to give you an update on where we are with the statement of accounts. You've got my covering report, which really is a very high-level report of the situation that we're currently facing ourselves. I would have liked to have been bringing the statement of accounts for sign-off today, but the fact of the matter is that simply with respect to all of the hard work that's gone on between ourselves and the auditor, the statement of accounts still aren't in a position to be either signed off by myself or by Jerry as the auditor. I'll hand over to Jerry in a minute just to explain a bit of the story and the position of where we're at. Crucially for me, I should be drawing attention to my covering report in terms of the Council's general fund balance, which from the changes to the statements that we've made because of all of the issues that we've found since it came to Council at the end of September, has seen the general fund reserve balance go from just over £1 million to just over £500,000. I would state at this point in time that is only the position as it's known today. We clearly still have to do some more work before we bring the accounts back to you for approval on January the 26th. But what I've agreed with Jerry as the external auditor is that January the 26th is the date that we bring the accounts for resolution by full council. Just to focus a bit more on the general fund balance, that is of great concern to myself because clearly we need to finalise the position going into the 16-17 financial year. Appreciate we are 9 months into that year. You, as a council, haven't had overall budget monitoring position for the council, so you haven't been able to assess the overall position. Neither could you do that because you don't know the final position from the 15-16. So that's some of the crucial things that forefront in my mind in terms of closing off the accounts and understanding the position for 16-17. Before then, we can go in to consider the reality of the difficult decisions that we're going to have to make for the 17-18 budget. So it's crucial that we bottom out the balance on the general fund through the resolution of the final before the statement of accounts. That's all really for me, just to say, really to introduce myself and say hello. I would have, as I say, would have preferred to have been there in person to do that. I'm just going to now hand over to Jerry, who's going to take you through in a bit more detail the audit findings report.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon, members. Apologies, I can't be with you today. As you know, I like to come over and see you face to face. Unfortunately, the fog on the Isles of Scilly didn't allow our plane to take off at Newquay, so apologies, and I hope to be with you at the end of January. At the end of September, I presented our draft audit findings report to you, and at that day I stated that we were not in a position to be able to give an opinion on the financial statements for 15-16 because work was still ongoing and a number of items still need to be resolved. However, I thought it was appropriate to give you an update through a revised audit findings report, which I know you have in your packs that sent out to you last week, just to make sure that you are aware of some of the significant changes that have occurred on your accounts since our last meeting, and also the items that are still outstanding that will need to be resolved before we can give our opinion at the end of January. So to that end, can I ask you to turn to page 10, which details the background and summary of progress to date, and also gives you an introduction as of the time of writing this report, which was the 6th of December as of today, 6th of December. So you may recall...
Can I just interrupt you a second? I'm really sorry, but we've got the problem with the double numbering of the pages. So page 10 for members, they should be aware that it's the pack number, page 10. It's also got a little 6 at the bottom right-hand corner.
That's right, thank you.
It's headed background and summary of progress. Sorry, I just want everybody literally to be on the same page.
Thank you, Chair. Has everybody got the page now, hopefully? So just to take you to the introduction, as of today, you may recall at the end of September, I did request that the Council of the Isles of Scilly review some asset valuations, those assets that hadn't been valued as part of the district valuer exercise for 15-16. And as a result of that fair value assessment on some of those assets, there has been a resultant impairment in the value of your assets, valuing them downwards by 1.1 million. And I think for peace of mind in terms of the members here today, what I have asked your Section 151 officer to do is also make sure that the remaining assets, totalling 4.6 million, also have a fair value undertaken on them, given the fact that the result in the previous exercise was an impairment of 1.1 million, so very important to get those values correct. There have been material changes to your balances for debtors. As you recall, in September, I reported to you I was still waiting for a number of items to be able to test that 2.1 million balance. And we concluded through that testing in October and November that your debtors balance was overstated by £446,000 for a number of reasons. Sorry, £546,000, sorry. And the rest of the items are outlined there in the introduction. So in terms of where we need to get to complete the audit, I've outlined on your page 10, my little page 6, the procedures that do need finalising. So if I take you to the second bullet point, today we have been supplied with further information on the grant income due to you, and we will be reviewing the details of that shortly. But all the other items, particularly the movement in reserves, do need to be resolved before we can get to a conclusion in concluding your audit. So I guess for members, as your auditor, there are probably 4 particular areas that I recommend need to be taken forward between now and the end of January. One is I've asked your Section 151 officer to undertake a detailed quality check of all the detailed adjustments that have been processed through the accounts so far, so that we can conclude what the general fund balance is. I've also asked for a review of reserves to be undertaken, and I have had discussions with officers this morning on that. And if you turn to page 44, which is the action plan, the big page 44, one of the recommendations today, recommendation 9, is that a review of all your reserves is undertaken to ensure that the Isles of Scilly are fully aware and have transparency on what is earmarked, what is unearmarked, reserves, etc., because that's what you'll need in terms of going forward to make your decisions on. I've also recommended that a detailed cash flow analysis be performed, and in my report, this is detailed on page 46. stating that a detailed cash flow analysis be performed for 12 months as of today, to make sure again that you are satisfied that you have sufficient cash balances to carry forward into the next 12 months. And finally, that a detailed review of all the outstanding items take place prior to us issuing our opinion at the end of January. So I'm happy to stop there in terms of the headline messages. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Members, Councillor Billsborough.
Chairman, on page 1 of the report, right at the bottom, paragraph 1.5, it's been agreed that the accounts should be signed off during January. Now, just supposing, and it could happen, these accounts weren't signed off. If we go past our deadline and they've not been signed off, what will happen?
I presume you want an answer from the Section 151 officer. Right, please.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think since the end of September, we have moved some way forward in getting to a position where these accounts can be signed off. I'll be quite honest with you now in terms of my discussions with Jerry during October and November. There was a real position where I wasn't going to be in a position to be signing these accounts. However, the work that we've undertaken so far and in bringing this update to you today, I think we will be in a position in January that we will be able to sign the accounts off. The other flip side, and because I'm sure you'll come back and say, well, what if we aren't going to be able to sign them off, is that there will have to be a discussion with Jerry as our external auditor. But what I'm suggesting as a 151 is that we have a resolution either way on the statement of accounts, whether that is signing them off or the accounts are being qualified. There is a resolution either way, and that we don't go beyond January.
Chairman, yes, I appreciate all the work which has been done, but it is conceivable that the accounts may not be signed off. What is the worst that could happen to us? What would be the penalty if they were not signed off?
So there's no penalty for them being signed off, for not being signed off. It's in terms of anything from governments. So it's just that we will have a position where we'll either have a qualified set of accounts, and that will be, I think that in itself is flagged to government, but there's no financial penalty for not having a set of signed accounts or having a qualified set of accounts.
But is there any other penalty besides financial?
Well, there is obviously the reputational risk and damage to the council in terms of it will be highlighted, and it has been by external audit and internal audit, that the controls around producing a set of accounts are simply not robust enough, and hence it's led to the qualification. So there are reputational issues around that, and they're obviously in terms of transparency for decision making. In terms of the future, you have to be satisfied. So, although again no penalties as such, but you're going to be asked to make certain decisions, and the robustness and accuracy of the balances for the 15-16 accounts predicate some of those future decisions. So once again, no direct financial penalties or other penalties as such from not signing off the accounts, but if there are reputational or other risks there that we should be aware of by not having signed off or having a qualified account.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got two questions, one general and one specific. If I could first of all start with the specific, which is the action plan, item number 9. The external auditor is recommending carrying out a 12-month rolling cash flow forecast. to which the management response is, while recognising the benefits of that, it isn't considered the best use of resources at the moment. Now, obviously, I'm picking up a bit of tension here, and I would think at this moment in time, given some of the problems that we've got within the report, it would seem a very sensible idea to carry out the rolling cash flow forecast. So can I ask, will that be subject to continuing ongoing resolution? Obviously, there's a slight difference of opinion, and hopefully this can be reconciled. That's my first specific query.
Chair, if it's okay, perhaps I can answer that question from the member. I've included this recommendation in your action plan in the updated version today because that was the recommendation I made way back in September. So I have repeated that recommendation today, and the response that's included in there is the response that was as of September. And it's absolutely crucial, I think, that the Isles of Scilly Council do review the cash flow forecast for the next 12 months. And that has been agreed, and it will take place by your new Section 151 officer.
And your second?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right. Secondly, if I could just say to Ms Daly that throughout this audit report, there seems a presumption, in fact, the audit letter is actually addressed to members of the Finance, Audit and Scrutiny Committee. I think we're well aware that scrutiny is an issue that we should be focusing on at present and in the future, but I would just like to point out that the Finance, Audit and Scrutiny Committee hasn't actually met since July, and so obviously hasn't had a chance to have a look or comment on any of these particular issues at the moment. I would also like to pick up on another issue that seems to be threaded through the audit report, which is that the Council has apparently agreed a substantial savings plan of 4.1 million going forward. The first time I, as a councillor, actually heard that we had a substantial savings plan of 4.1 million was in the audit report of last September, when I actually did express some reservations and concerns about those set of accounts. I would just like to register again the fact that as of now, councillors have only agreed a savings plan through to next March, while fully recognising that all of us around this table understand the seriousness of the predicament that we are in and the need to make savings. I would just like to have minuted again the fact that as of now, we have only agreed savings to next March, and it is concerning that repeatedly papers seem to be given to members that indicate, for example, a figure within, say, the community services area that appears to be a planned savings for 17-18, when actually colleagues, while recognising that we have a problem, haven't actually agreed any particular figure, or indeed any figure at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any comment on that from the mainland? Hello?
If I can just pick up on that in terms of, because we're straying into the MTFP sort of context there in terms of the savings. I don't want to say plan, because it's the MTFP that went to you in September was an estimate of your resources against your spend, and that showed that a 4.1 million over the next 5 years. And I think that financial position is where that's coming from. I would agree that there's no definitive plan in terms of how that gap is going to be met. I would also stress and point out that, as in line with the LGA report that I circulated, we need to articulate the gap more clearly to members in terms of what that gap is over the medium-term financial plan. Focus should be, for me, on 17-18 and what that gap is. We can't do that definitively until we've bottomed out the 15-16 accounts, but we then need to be more articulate and clear in terms of what the planning gap is over the NCFP. And I think that the last figure, 4.1, was a figure that was given to give that scale of the potential decisions and issues over the next 5 years. But I don't see that in terms of a definitive position until we get further clarity from setting or resolving the 15-16 accounts and then moving forward. And there'll be further updates on the MTFP as we move forward.
Councillor Sigottit, was that?
Thank you. I mean, I do recognise everything that Mr. Brown has said, and I welcome him I welcome him joining us in that position, and I hope that perhaps I know his schedule is no doubt very busy, but I would welcome the opportunity, together with other colleagues, to actually meet with Mr. Brown informally and actually discuss some of the issues that we currently have in front of us.
So, if I may, Chair, just on that point, there is a workshop on the 5th of January that we are discussing the budget, and I'd very much welcome members to attend that workshop, and I'll be available then to discuss informally the position of the Council.
Thank you, that's most helpful.
Councillor Mrs Saville, and then afterwards it'll be Councillor Daly.
Thank you very much. And may I also welcome you as our new 151 officer. But like you, I'm really concerned about the level of our general fund reserves, especially bearing in mind that this current year, as yet, we haven't made the savings that we had hoped to make, and therefore will be significantly overspent, and that overspend will have to come from our reserves, and therefore I think this authority is in a really serious financial position at this current time. Really, my question is there anything you can possibly say to relieve our fears at this given moment? I guess not, but I thought it's worth asking the question.
Very good question, and I wish I could. The reality is you've summed up the position, the financial position, very well. In that it is a very precarious financial position. The one thing I would say is that we haven't as yet bottomed out the general fund position because we haven't closed the accounts yet. We still have to work through that. But if I use the position today going forward as a general fund balance of just over £500,000, yes, the budget monitoring position is forecasting an overspend this year. There's a bit more analysis that I want to do to understand that position as yet, but that puts us even in an even more precarious position going forward as well. But that's therefore more imperative for us as a council to review our earmarked reserves. We are, as an authority, sitting on £4 million worth of earmarked reserves, and just as our auditor has pointed out, one of the things we need to do very quickly in terms of looking at the budget for 17-18 is a thorough review of our earmarked reserves, and then we can understand how much money we're holding, what we're holding it for, and if there is surplus earmarked reserves, then that can be used to bolster the general fund balance, and that can be used to re-establish the financial position for the council going forward. But I echo your concerns because they are very real to me as well. The financial position for the Council of the Isles of Scilly is a very big concern for me.
Thank you, Chairman. I mean, members took a decision only in September that we would keep a minimum of 1 million in our reserves, and obviously that's been sliced in half already. Although I do doubt where the just over the 1 million that we were presented with in September did come from, because in fact in the statement of accounts for last year actually said our general fund reserves were 850,000. So suddenly they had been increased in the report we brought to members in September, and I don't really understand how.
Sorry, yeah, if I may, Chair, just to comment on that. So the level of 1 million reserve, one of the things I have to do as Section 151 officer in setting the budget is sorry, someone's microphone, the microphone is still on because we're getting feedback. wonderful. Whoever turned the microphone off, that's wonderful. So just in terms of that, the point around the 1 million level of reserve, as a Section 151 officer, as part of setting the budget, I have to comment on the robustness of the budget as well as the minimum level of reserves. And what I'll be doing is a risk assessment of the council's financial position, and then from that assessing and providing an estimate to members of the level of reserves. Now, particularly because of the financial position the council faces itself, I don't think there's going to be a silver bullet to magically get the reserves back up to the level that one would hope they would be in terms of financial sustainability. But as long as we have some plans in place to be able to get us back into that position, then that is the critical point in sort of January, February time next year. And in terms of the previous point from the statement of accounts where they were 800,000 to 1 million, that is a very good point to be made, and I recognise where you're coming from. It was a very real question to be made in September in terms of how that £1 million could have arisen.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to Councillor Daly.
Thanks, Chairman. I'm no accountant, but we're obviously in a very serious financial position, and I'd like to hear from the Chief Executive how he feels this has come about.
Thank you, Councillor Daly. I think the financial position of the Council we have been aware of the last few years, and if you recall the report that was done by the then Section 151 officer in 2014 highlighted the fact that the reserves had been depleted quite significantly, and that significant steps had to be undertaken to bring the authority on a financial sustainable footing. So over the last 2 years we've been trying to take a number of actions going forward. We've been trying to address the cost control measures going forward. We've been trying to implement a number of savings plans, and parallel been working with government to really get a grip to the grant arrangements that are in place for this authority. Those discussions are still ongoing, and we're still in the process and working with government to identify how the authority could be made on a sustainable footing. So it's not something that has happened just overnight. It's a process that has been ongoing, and we're trying to address this through different measures as is outlined by the 151 officer.
And I think it is also fair to say that for many years, whereas we have agreed as a council to borrow prudentially, we haven't actually done that. We've dipped into reserves each time, so we've depleted our reserves rather than borrowing money at low interest that we should have been doing. So we've backed ourselves into a financial corner.
Chairman, thank you for that, and Chief Executive. It seems to me that we've just not taken the thing seriously and urgently enough, and we're the ones at fault for not doing that. Are we now taking it as an urgent and serious situation?
I'd like to reassure members that it certainly has been given the utmost urgency, and I'm sure that would be corroborated by the Section 151 officer and, in fact, Ms Daly. Hello?
Hello? Right at the crucial moment, it cuts off.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, just at the crucial minute, right at the end, it cuts off. So we missed the last bit of the statement.
Well, I was only asking for corroboration that this is being treated with, given the utmost priority and seriousness at the moment as we try and work our way out of the situation we're in.
Yes, so from my perspective as 151, the main focus is to resolve this position in terms of the statement of accounts, and then move forward to getting the financial position of the authority and there's many other issues that need to be addressed in terms of the financial reporting and the clarity and transparency of information to members. But that is our focus, and I'm working hard with the external auditor to ensure that the first step of that, the statement of accounts, is resolved as best as we can.
Can I just make a comment on that in terms of our role as your external auditors? And we've been working hard throughout the summer, as you know, and part of my role is to report back to members, yourselves, on a regular basis, which is why we've got this interim report again for you today. Because I want to make sure that external audit give you the service that you require in terms of having that absolute assurance that your 15-16 accounts are materially accurate. And that is why we're saying we will bring that opinion at the end of January. Because it's essential, I think, from our role as external auditors to give the right opinion on your 15-16 accounts. And further needs to take place, as I've outlined. Once that work has taken place and once I'm satisfied that those accounts are materially correct, I can then give you the assurance that you need.
Thank you very much. Councillor Billsborough.
Mr. Chairman, once the accounts are accurate, we shall then have an accurate idea of what savings we have to make. Now, if we go into it and we make all the savings we can, but find that we cannot achieve all the savings we need without encroaching on the frontline services, what do you suggest we do? It may well be that we do all we can, but we still can't meet the target. What would you advise?
Well, there's a process going on at the moment, which the Chief Executive is leading on, to go through all of the options. And as I mentioned, the workshop on the 5th of Jan will be going through that as well. Thinking positively, we're very much hoping that those options will ensure that there is a balanced budget. I don't think we can wholly rule out reductions in resources for frontline services because of the reality of the situation that's facing us. But hopefully through those workshops and the assessment of the position that we find ourselves following the statement of accounts, plus all the review of the earmarked reserves and all of the other assumptions that we have to put together, that we'll be in a position to put forward a balanced budget for 17-18. If not, then I think it was mentioned last year in terms of the setting of the budget, then that responsibility will fall on myself to issue the Section 114 notice to then legally set a balanced budget for the authority, which is something I do not want to do, but legally I'm bound to.
So just to clarify one point, you cannot rule out cuts to the frontline services. Is that true or false?
Well, I think you need to look at all options. Ultimately, this is a budget that has to be approved by members, and you therefore have to balance the budget, and therefore you have to look at all options to be able to do that. So I'm not saying that it's definitely going to lead to reductions. I'm not saying that it definitely will avoid reductions. I think you have to look at all of the options available to you in setting the balanced budget.
Thank you.
Yes, and members have shown a clear willingness to look at all the options, and that is what we will continue to do, with all due respect to our community and with their best interests at heart. Councillor Sims.
Well, with respect to your statement, Gordon, it's not actually Mr. Brown's job to decide what frontline services we cut, if indeed we unfortunately do have them. It's our job.
Chairman, I didn't ask which ones. I was just putting the possibility that we may have to.
Are there any further comments from around the table, please?
Referring back a little bit, I've had a number of discussions with a number of members, and all have had a quite legitimate concern: how can we make decisions going forward when we don't know what the budget situation is? This is why I think we all really hope that we get as rock solid position as we can on the 26th of January, because we have a lot of decisions to make this coming winter, and we do need that as a basis to go forward. And I just wanted to reiterate that I think everybody feels like that. I certainly do as Vice Chair of Council.
Can I just follow on from that, and then I'll bring in Councillor O'Neill. With reference to the meeting on the 26th of January, which I hope members will be able to attend, in very early February, we've taken the decision to call another full council, which will deal with the budget, so that we should have a clear opportunity to think and reflect on the statement of accounts, to work through the paperwork, and then we will take the budget in a separate meeting. There will be, of course, workshops to assist members in collecting information, being able to ask questions, but it is very, very important that we isolate the budget and give it our full attention. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I endorse the Vice Chairman's comments, absolutely. If we don't know where we are, we don't know where we're going. I don't entirely agree with Councillor Billsborough's comments about specific aspects of it. I think we do have a vague idea of how bad the situation is. We don't know the absolute final figures, granted, and that's why, you know, the auditors are going to give us that information as soon as it's available, and I look forward to that. I also completely endorse the Chief Executive's comments that this hasn't happened overnight, but we've been asking to look at all of the options for at least a year, and here we still are. And I would like to say that in my humble opinion, everything that we've been doing for at least the last year to rectify this has been completely and utterly ineffective.
Councillor Mrs Montford.
Yes, I'd just like to ask the Chief Executive, do we have enough people in the Finance Department to carry us through all this that's going on, or do we need more expertise as well as our 151 officer?
Thank you for that difficult question, Councillor Mumford. I think in terms of resource, it's not just the finance department, it's actually the resource that deliver the services as well, because the people that deliver the services, they best understand the requirements of the services in order to get accurate estimates and calculations on how to move forward. But I think we have the resource we have, and I don't think we have additional capability or capacity, if you like, to bring in additional resource to move forward in a very short time. We worked very closely with the Local Government Association, and the Local Government Association commissioned a financial review, and I think that review has been very, very useful in very clearly identifying the areas where we can make progress. So it's very much focusing the current resource we have on those areas and those recommendations, trying to drive this forward. So that gives me some confidence in terms of capability. I think by when members appointed the Section 151 officer, Mr. Brown, back in September, what they did appoint, of course, is also a very long experience and a very experienced capability to help and to identify resources going forward. And again, that gives me the confidence that we will be able to come forward with better information and better figures to enable members to make the decisions going forward. I don't think, as a knee-jerk reaction, bringing in additional resource would help the situation as we are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs Grottick.
Thank you, Chairman. If I could just say again that the more information in detail that members have, the more we can understand and attempt to support each other and the officers in this very difficult situation. For example, this LGA review into the finances, can we have sight of that? Will that be discussed at a workshop?
I believe that was circulated.
Which one are you actually referring to?
I talked about it with
I thought you meant,
morning.
I'm aware we've had the peer review. I'm wondering if there has been additional input from the LGA to the finances.
Do you mean the report by Peter Stachniewski?
but nothing ongoing. The paperwork that we've had, we are up to date with all the paperwork that we've had. Fine.
It was quite a outstanding piece of work, a very serious report that pulled no punches. So
yes, and I did ask questions about that particular piece. I must have misunderstood the Chief Executive. My apologies.
Sorry. Are there any further questions? Councillor Mrs Summer.
Yes, Chairman, it went out to all members last Friday, that report. No questions at all, Chairman, but I think all of us as members, as well as looking at the very tight budgets, we must remind ourselves that we also have a responsibility as responsible employers. I look at the officers who are in this table, in this room today, and every one of them is looking exhausted. And I think we must recognise that. I think our demands on them when we wish for information must be strategic, must be relevant, and that we have to actually do some work ourselves in bringing ideas forward. And I think, that's just a general comment across the board, Chairman, and before I would just like them for the input that they're all putting into their work at the moment. I think, we're all aware there's another issue, not only finances, that is going on within our community at the moment. Thank you.
Yeah, I would echo everything you've just said, and I thank you for saying it. These are difficult times for all of us. Our officers are under a lot of pressure. We are now down to 4 senior managers, and I think we need to recognise that and make sure that whereas we have a duty to ask questions and to get information, it's got to be commensurate. Councillor Billsborough.
Yes, I endorse what you were saying, Councillor Mrs Saville, except to say that we as members have responsibility, but we can only act on professional advice.
Are there any further comments or questions? Oh, Councillor Mrs Bennett.
Thank you. In the report, there's a statement that a formal request to the Council will be issued to improve systems and processes for the next set of accounts so that similar issues don't reoccur. Are they all contained within the action plan?
Sorry, thank you. Can I just explain what that means? As an auditor, we are allowed to issue formal requests. It's part of our statutory powers as the external auditor for local authorities in particular. And given the outcome of the last 4 months and the issues raised around controls and compilation of accounts and draft financial statements, it will be a formal letter. So it's not included in the action plan, Councillor, but it will be another document that I will be producing for you.
Right, thank you very much. Are there any further comments or questions? In that case, we have a recommendation to note the position on the Council Statement of Accounts. I have a proposer. Councillor Billsborough, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's agenda item 10. I take it that agenda item 9 was subsumed into that. Yes. I'd like to thank you both, Andy Brown and Geraldine Daly, for participating. We look forward very much to having you here in person in January. I think that would be important for members, but thank you very much, and also for all your hard work too.
No, thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Are we on... now... Yeah. Due to, well, perhaps the Chief Executive would like to explain why we don't have agenda item 11.
Initially we had anticipated to have a discussion with the Section 151 officer around the MTFP in follow-up of the LGA report, and particularly the presentation of the
medium-term financial plan.
Going forward, and to provide detailed budget monitoring information. That information is not in a position as yet that the Section 151 officer will be able to explain to members exactly where we are, and some further analysis is required. So that will happen at the short.
But can we have
opportunity.
an assurance that that will be forthcoming at the end of January?
Absolutely. Well, it has to be.
Yeah, it has to be, but I want that assurance. Right. You will have noticed there are several glitches in the agenda. There have been problems with the computer misfunctioning or something this week, so our sympathies to Mr. Thomas over there. Moving on to, I don't know why I'm down again for a second update, but I shall use this occasion to say what I completely forgot to say at the beginning, at the request of Mrs. Hick, that we now have a buzzer bus. Hurrah! Would you like to say anything?
Fully accessible, so I think that's going to make a big difference to our community this winter. They're the things that matter, really, aren't they?
And thank you very much to all the...
Is it diesel or electric?
It was going so well. Many thanks to Mrs. Hick and all her team and all those involved in getting the bus back here, and long may it circulate comfortably. Agenda item 13, members' updates, verbal reports. Councillor Daly, I'll go round in turn.
Thank you, Chairman. I should have been giving you a report from the NHS Kerno meetings, but unfortunately it was cancelled due to them being too busy to have a normal meeting.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mrs. Grotty.
Thank you, Chair. As I reported to the last Children's Committee, I was lucky enough to attend an excellent weekend training course with regard to training for the Lead Member for Children role, supported and run by the Local Government Association. It was absolutely excellent, and it really was a very interesting, useful and informative course. I've also attended mentoring sessions with regard to my...
Sorry, Councillor Mrs. Grotting, somebody is going to pull the plug on the telephone. GCHQ is obviously quite busy today. Right, Councillor Mrs. Grotting, would you like to just...
Sorry, just to finish. I've also attended mentoring sessions and a lead member meeting in respect of my responsibilities with regard to services to older people.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Saville.
Yes, Chairman, two reports really. One from the Sustainable Transformation Board, the plan there. It was good to see members in the chamber a couple of weeks ago when Mr. Phil Confu came across to present to members about the Sustainable Transformation Plan. This is a key document for Cornwall and the Isles of Scilly concerning health and social care. It is now a public document, and I'm pleased to say it is on our council website, and I would urge members to read it. Obviously, council has already made a decision in the summer about our way forward for integrating health and social care, but it's not only about that. There are other issues within the plan, so I would encourage people to read it. And secondly, I do sit on the Island, or currently I sit on the Island Partnership Board. They have not met since their annual general meeting in October, where there was expressed some tensions with our local authority, but hopefully, a meeting is planned with the chairman and their officer and myself and the chief executive for this Friday, and we hopefully will iron out some of those issues.
Thank you very much. Further member updates? Councillor Mrs. Mumford.
Yes, I have been appointed by HOS to represent the STP subcommittee. Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the first meeting because of weather, and there should be another meeting sometime before Christmas, I'm hoping. So further updates at the next full council.
Thank you. It is always worth...
Difficulties. Very briefly, anybody going to the mainland for a medical appointment referred there from the islands should pay no more than £5. There have been difficulties in this, especially with the off-islands, who have had to get special boats. Anyway, I assure you, this has been taken up very urgently, and I hope in the new year to be able to tell you more. We're doing our best.
Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Councillor Billsborough, have you finished what? Yep. Okay. Are there any further member updates? Yep. Oh, sorry, Councillor Simpson.
I went to an Hitachi thing in London in October, which I was very impressed with the company and their vision, and I think quite a lot of useful conversations were had, and I think we're already pretty much on the map with Hitachi, perhaps a little bit more now, and perhaps a little bit more dispiritingly at LEP meeting last week, where they are very, very worried about the level of funding going to LEPs because it's been cut enormously, so it's an ongoing story really there.
I think sadly it's the mantra of our age about budget restrictions, isn't it? If there are no further updates, then that brings our formal meeting to a close. There are no reports in part 2 and there are no reports in part 3. Thank you very, very much for attending.